So let's talk about Pokrovsk. This is the Saturday edition. Today, I'd like to focus specifically on this direction since you constantly monitor and track the situation. How has this week been for Pokrovsk? What is the situation as of today? Is there any up-to-the-minute fresh information? Thank you.
Well, I don't want to use general phrases like the situation is difficult but under control, but we can all see that in Pokrovsk there are still Russians there, quite a lot of them, and they keep coming in. I think we've seen videos on social media showing a column of Russians, specifically infantry, moving into the city from the southern outskirts under the cover of fog using various vehicles. It's a horrifying video, but we didn't see what happened next. Later, the 25th Airborne showed us the continuation and how that column was ultimately destroyed. But from this video, we can understand, actually we're seeing it on the screen right now probably, that the Russians are still continuing to enter there, and it's not yet possible to drive them out completely. We've seen a lot of operations that have already been carried out. We've seen how they were hyped up in the media, but we also see what the outcome is. The enemy is there, the enemy is in the city, and now I hope some kind of action is being planned to somehow not necessarily drive them out, but at least prevent them from taking control of key intersections through which our troops are still entering. So we can't say that our troops are not in Pokrovsk. We have our pilots who are still conducting reconnaissance of the city and its surroundings. There are assault troops there who continue to take action, but nevertheless, the main task now is to prevent the enemy from fully taking control of the key roads in this city. Although, as we can see, and I already showed this video on my Telegram channel and later on air at TSN, the video of Pokrovsk from a bird's eye view when it seems like an absolutely empty city, completely burned out and scorched, but nevertheless, you don't see direct battles between infantry there because in reality, the fighting is going on for every high ground. Because the enemy is trying to seize every high ground since whoever controls the dominant height controls the entire direction. In the same way, they are trying to drive the Russians out of these heights so as not to let them take the commanding positions. That's basically it. And of course, this video of Pokrovsk, which we're seeing on the screen right now, doesn't really convey it. The sound of the sheer number of drones dominating the sky, this is exactly what we're talking about because the entire sky above the city is filled with drones, whether they're the enemy's or ours. And here, whoever has more of them will essentially control the situation because it's the drones that disrupt supply routes, it's the drones that destroy infantry, and there are so many of them there that it's absolutely impossible for anyone to move freely around the city.
And our broadcasts are helping to ensure that Ukrainian soldiers have even more of these drones. And right now, we're displaying a QR code. You saw how a column of occupiers was destroyed as they tried to enter Pokrovsk under the cover of fog. And for our soldiers there on the Pokrovsk front, it's very important to feel supported and to make sure there are even more drones.
In fact, right now you can see the QR code on the screen. This is a fundraiser for the 79th Air Assault Brigade. These are the Mykolaiv paratroopers who are holding the line. On the Pokrovsk front, but specifically in Mirnygrad, that's exactly where the main direction of the assault is happening right now. The Russians are trying to advance further beyond Pokrovsk. To the north, we've already seen that they've entered. Now their objective is to cut off the logistical routes into this city. They are still there, but nevertheless, the city, specifically Mirnygrad, remains under the control of our forces. The 7th Corps states this every time. And in fact, we need to support our guys so that they don't let the Russians enter this city.
In a minute, we will have a soldier from the 79th Air Assault Brigade join our broadcast, but before that, I want to ask you about this Pokrovsk-Mirnygrad agglomeration. It is usually described as a single unified entity. They are interconnected during combat on the battlefield. The defense of Pokrovsk affects Mirnygrad. Mirnygrad affects Pokrovsk, and there is a certain logistics between them. I want to understand this from a military perspective. Why is an agglomeration of such cities so interconnected?
They're interconnected because they are extremely close to each other. Pokrovsk gradually merges into the village of Rivne, which is right here by the main road, actually the key route between Pokrovsk and Mirnygrad. And then you drive a bit past a few fields and you're already in Mirnygrad, which stretches completely along some notional territory there. And in fact, the defense of these cities, first of all, they're basically on the same road, meaning from Pokrovsk to Mirnygrad. Then there are 1 or 2 more roads that connect other sections of the front, specifically with Pokrovsk and Mirnygrad, so that's why it's considered not a grouping that our troops receive, but rather a single agglomeration. Well, in fact, we all understand that if we lose Pokrovsk, then the pressure on Mirnygrad begins. Because one way or another, when entering Pokrovsk, we used to take a single road through the village of Rodinska. That's already a bit further up towards Dobropilya. Right now, our paratroopers are also fighting for this village, pushing back the Russians, destroying as many as possible in order to prevent another northern road to Pokrovsk, which leads towards Mirnygrad, from being blocked. If we lose Pokrovsk, the situation worsens for Mirnygrad. We see that Mirnygrad is in operational encirclement, but it is still under the full control of our forces. If we unblock Pokrovsk, we get... Of course, this section of the front is already completely under control, but we still have this road that leads from Pokrovsk to Mirnygrad, and it also goes from Pavlohrad. This is the Dnipropetrovsk direction. There is still a threat towards Dnipropetrovsk region because we see what is happening in the village of Udakhne, where the Russians are trying to push from that side to reach this very road that connects Dnipropetrovsk region, specifically with Pokrovsk. We have constantly heard that Pokrovsk is the gateway from Dnipropetrovsk region to Donetsk region. Well, that's pretty much how it is.
Well, yes, because there's a direct highway there, and across the fields, basically I was born there, so I know there are no big bridges left, and it's very easy for the Russians to advance across the fields, even to move drones and observe everything. But nevertheless, on the southern outskirts of Pokrovsk, even in your Telegram channel, it's written that there are units of our infantry. How does that happen when the Russians are actually in Pokrovsk itself, but our infantry is still on the outskirts? How is that possible?
That's a complicated question. Actually, I hope that decisions are being made right now to figure out how to move, save, and evacuate that infantry. We definitely don't want to spread panic or anything like that. That's not our job. I know that the relevant decisions are currently being made at the Joint Forces Command. Why are they still there? According to the Joint Forces Command, it's so that there isn't a Russian breakthrough toward Mirnygrad from the southern direction, from that area where they are positioned. They are the ones holding back that breakthrough. And the presence of these positions is justified. But the situation is also that this particular section of the front is in the most difficult position because Pokrovsk is facing Russian troops and the Russians are trying to cut off logistics to Mirnygrad while that infantry is standing there in a very encircled situation. I don't want to use that word, but that's pretty much what it looks like. But I hope that the defense forces are making decisions. I know that's happening there, and I think we'll see some results from those decisions.
Well, let's add to our broadcast the commander of the FPV platoon of the Unmanned Systems Battalion of the 79th Separate Airborne Assault Brigade, blogger Alexander Napozivny. Welcome to the air, Alexander.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being with us. Hello, Sasha. Hello.
Alexander?
You heard our conversation, and as Julia already mentioned, she said that you are actually much closer to Mirnygrad Theater of Operations. What is happening there? What can you add to Julia's words?
Well, in principle, everything has already been said. I want to say that today our warriors, our soldiers, are heroically defending this city. I can't explain it any other way. There is movement, yes, it is difficult, but it exists. And the defense is holding up.
Well, in order for the defense to hold stronger and the morale, the mood of our fighters to simply improve. Please, who can do it? 100, 200, 500, Ravnias. You are active now, but we are asking for more because drones, their cost fluctuates. An FPV drone can cost from 30,000 as well as a Mavic.
30,000 is the minimum. A fully equipped FPV will cost up to 60,000 if I'm not mistaken, right, Sashko? And a Mavic is even more expensive.
We've raised over 30,000, but we want more. And as a blogger, I'd like to ask you a question. Recently, a video appeared showing a Russian flag in Mirnygrad. It appeared on one of the mines to the south and then disappeared. And then it disappeared. How did it even end up there if the defense forces are holding Mirnygrad?
You know, the fighting in the city is very dynamic. Sometimes the enemy manages to slip through, but they are destroyed. That's normal for a city. Somehow they managed to hang it up there, and it was immediately taken down. As you can see, it was destroyed right away.
The image was...
For the Russians, Alexander, how much does urban development help or hinder the work of drones? Does working in the city make things more difficult? What are the specifics for our UAV operators?
It's definitely harder to operate drones in the city. It's very simple. The nature of radio waves, if we're talking about radio-controlled drones. It's harder to work in the city because there are more interferences. If it's optics, then basically it's a bit harder because there are more obstacles and you have to fly around more. So yes, fighting in the city is more difficult.
Do we have parity with the Russians in terms of the number of drones in this area? because we read military analysis that the Russians have concentrated not only a large number of infantry in the Pokrovsk and Novograd agglomerations, but also an incredible number of drones. Do we have enough of our own resources?
Of course not, we don't have enough. We need a lot more of them. The enemy currently has more drones in this area. More. We need more drones, then the results will be much better. We need more high-quality drones. That's very important. If there are a lot of drones, but, for example, if they're optical and 70% of them lose connection, then those optical drones are completely useless. We need good, high-quality drones.
Good, high-quality drones. We hope to acquire them after this broadcast. Unusually, they
buy them themselves, right?
Yes, if we manage to raise the funds, we will transfer the money for these drones thanks to you.
Honestly, I can see that Sasha is too tired. This is not his usual way of talking. And I understand why, because probably this morning there was another assault on Mirnygrad. I often communicate with this unit, especially with the 79th and 38th who are stationed there. They send me videos showing how the infantry is trying to break through the southern outskirts. The situation on the southern outskirts is more complicated. That flag that appeared, it showed up specifically on the southern outskirts, which is key because, I repeat, there aren't nearly as many Russians in Mirnygrad itself as we see in Pokrovsk. And I think that Sasha spoke with us so briefly only because there was another assault this morning.
We'll let Sasha go then. Thank you very much for joining the broadcast. Please hang in there. Together with our viewers, we will be as active as possible, and thank you with donations and fundraising for what your
unit needs so much. We let many people go, yes, to rest, to sleep maybe, but we are continuing the fundraiser, right, Sasha, right now.
Yulia, could you please tell us what is it about these supposedly incredibly powerful or well-equipped Russian drone operator units? There's a lot of information about them online. Do they really have something special in the way these units operate?
Actually, this is a good place to start answering the question of why what happened in Pokrovsk happened, because Rubicon entered there. Because in Pokrovsk, we see the same principle that we saw in the Kursk region. In fact, when the Russian Rubicon took control of all the logistical routes, only then did the Russian infantry begin to advance. In other words, they changed their tactics. There is no longer a need for such heavy assaults as we saw, for example, in Bakhmut. Now it's enough to have a technologically equipped unit that can fully control the airspace. This happened in the Kursk region, and we are seeing it now in Pokrovsk. What is Rubicon? It's a unit that was created similar to our drone forces, but what's their advantage? They have more money. So much more, in fact, that we can't even comprehend it. And all this money is being poured in huge amounts into logistics, development, purchasing Chinese parts, and any others in order to assemble a massive number of drones. Again, it's about people. We've also planned it so that there should now be fewer infantry and more drone pilots. They did exactly the same thing. And now, a huge number of the infantry who used to come at us as cannon fodder are now turning into these pilots who completely disperse along the front line and take control of all our skies. And this is a huge problem for us because right now I think and believe that we need to look for ways to counter these pilots specifically. We have had a priority to destroy large numbers of infantry there. This was mentioned at one time by Madhyar in an interview that we needed to eliminate a company of infantrymen in a day. Yes, that really was happening, but now there just isn't that same number of infantry as there used to be. Now we need to focus specifically on eliminating Russian pilots because they are the main problem, and this is already being discussed. Well, it's not just me as a journalist saying this. First and foremost, it's the military who are talking about it. In fact, once again, Madhyar stated that they are now increasing the number of unmanned systems. Again, the number of strike drone units within the brigades stationed on the front line is increasing. This is being done to counter Russian pilots. And that's why I think that destroying these particular targets will be a top priority in the near future.
Yulia said that the Russians have a lot of money, but we have a lot of caring people who donate. Right now, we've raised enough for 2 drones, but there are still a few minutes left and we can add more. Yulia, I also started talking about this on your Telegram channel. Kyrienko Press, you can find it on Telegram and subscribe if you want.
I'll show it on the screen now.
You also mention on this Telegram channel how Russians are trying to push their narratives, not on your channel, but their own, and what should be done so that Ukrainians don't fall for it.
So, friends, as you can see while Yulia is getting ready to answer, here is the QR code for her Telegram channel. Scan it now with your phone and subscribe because there are a lot of different fakes circulating online. Yulia has verified information from the front, from the battlefield, so it's worth subscribing to understand the real state of events.
There are insights.
Yes, by the way, there's actually an insight there from today's and yesterday's assault already from the Dnipropetrovsk direction, but we'll talk about that later if we want to, if there's time. So what are we talking about? Last week, at the beginning of the week, information appeared from a video in which supposedly Russians captured, supposedly our guys surrendered, more than 20 people, as they walk through greenery with their hands raised. And this very quickly spread across Telegram channels, including ours. And it was said that these were our guys who surrendered so that the Russians could take advantage of it. In reality, when I came to find out whether this was actually true, particularly in the unit stationed in Mirnygrad, the guys were very surprised because, well, they said, first of all, everyone is present and accounted for. Secondly, everyone realized that it was a video created by artificial intelligence. And now, just how dangerous this whole story with social networks and artificial intelligence has become, now you can create some news that doesn't actually exist in reality by making a video like this, and everyone will think that Mirnygrad has fallen. But that's not true. The second story is about the information that was circulating about the Russians. Whether they had entered or not, whether it was our troops or not, on one of the key roads to Mirnygrad near the farms. Then, very quickly, the Russians spread the story that supposedly they had already cut off the logistical routes and moved on further. Then our side said that no, it was actually still our troops holding the position. So for a long time, people kept talking about this story, and then it turned out that one of the commanders from the 79th conducted his own informal investigation. And he realized that these were Russians who had wrapped themselves in green tape, trying to look like our soldiers, and they took control of one of the key roads where they tried to shoot at our troops. But thanks to the timely actions of our units, those 7 people were eliminated. In fact, we also reported about this. Russians
Are considered masters of fakes and know how to create them, so we need to counteract this and be discerning. Trustworthy Telegram channels and verified news updates.
You have to be careful with the information you consume, so the QR code for Yulia's Telegram channel is on the screen. Thank you.
Yulia Kyrienko was with us, special correspondent for TSN, military correspondent. Thank you.